CST-100 is a spacecraft. It'll take Americans, any paying passenger for that matter, up to the International Space Station or other low Earth orbit destinations and bring them safely back to Earth.
Here's our commander, Chris Ferguson.
I joined the NASA Astronaut Corps in 1998. I flew 3 times in 2006, 2008, and then the last flight in 2011. Being a part of the closing chapter of the space shuttle was in a way sad, but I was very proud. I was very proud to be able to, be given the opportunity to take it out in style. Atlantis is just a magnificent vehicle. It now has a wonderful home at the Kennedy Space Center, what I think is just one of the best display of artifacts. And it's great for me personally, because I get to go back there and visit it from time to time. And, I was just one of many who flew it. But I feel this personal connection because as I look up and Atlantis poised there, it's like in a 45-degree angle of bank with the payload bay open, I can sort of see the commander station in there and just think, wow, how lucky I was to have been the last one sitting in that seat.
4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis, a final visit to enhance the vision of Hubble into the deepest grandeur of our universe.
Shortly after the program was over, I had a personal decision to make. I knew that this commercial crew program was picking up steam, and it was clearly the way that the nation was headed. Boeing called and said, "Would you like to be a part of it?" And I sort of had thought I had reached my astronaut, pinnacle. There's nothing better that I could do after what I've done, and maybe it was just time to go do something else.
The Space Shuttle Atlantis on her final day in space.
But this was something you just couldn't say no to. To be able to come and do this, I tell everybody, if you can't fly them, you might as well build them. And not that I'm personally doing it, there's a great team here doing it, but I'd like to think that we have a big hand in influencing at least the way the crew interacts with the spacecraft. And it's just been an adventure since day one. Talking about the shuttle versus our spacecraft, what makes our spacecraft simpler? Well, the shuttle was amazing, of course. But some of us who are older remember some of the early problems they had with the thermal protection system. The thermal protection system, of course, is that sequence of bricks or tiles that were all over the bottom that protected the shuttle against the heat of reentry. Early on, we struggled with how to keep those tiles on the shuttle. They fell off a lot, and when they fell off, they created hazards. If you look at what we have right now, we have one heat shield underneath the base of the spacecraft. It's a lightweight, ablator heat shield that sheds heat by sintering away. Okay, so it carries heat away with it. The nice thing about it is we have a replaceable heat shield. We don't have to worry about individual tiles, and it enables us to quickly turn around the spacecraft and reuse it again. Everything on the inside looks simple as well. Space Shuttle, about 1,100 switches. 1,100 switches, dials, things that people can touch to do good things and sometimes bad things. But you look at it, it's very complex. It looks like an airliner from the 70s with overhead switches, console switches, everything off to the side. Even on the mid-deck, there's the lower floor, there's panels and switches. You look in our spacecraft, which is just slightly bigger from an interior volume, but you see a much cleaner environment, which is populated only by the very small instrument console that you see behind us. And the question is, well, how can you do that? The reason we can do it is this vehicle is designed to be autonomous. It's designed to operate largely itself. So the interface between the pilot, the one who's controlling the vehicle, and the vehicle itself is only there to be used in a sort of a contingency situation where something happens with the automation. So we limit it to what the pilot really needs to do in an emergency. And of course, one of the big changes is modern display technology. We're able to interface where previously we had to use switches or dials. Now we can call up any one of a multiple of displays. We have about 30 of them, and you can interact with the vehicle through all those displays. So it's like taking real estate and putting on an interactive television screen. So you can really limit the real estate. And when we limit the real estate, we limit the weight. All right, we increase the passenger carrying capability. Our training flow will be fairly short. Learn how to fly the shuttle, it took 3 years. There's 2 years sort of intensive study, and then 1 year of mission-specific study. We hope to have pilots and crews ready to fly within 9 months. The idea being that they don't have to do everything. They have to understand what's going on, but they don't have to physically engage the vehicle with everything. The automation is going to fly it on a day-to-day basis. As a matter of fact, this facility we're sitting in today is where the first crew for the very first flight in the Boeing spacecraft will train. When it comes to the first CST-100 crew, it's going to be some very simplistic, a very simplistic expression of, hey, you guys are about ready to make history. And we're going to understand the chinks in the armor with our primary NASA customer to the point that when we start flying commercial passengers, we're going to be very confident we understand that vehicle as well as it needs to be understood to provide safe passage back and forth. So that's where I think, we really get the idea of, hey, low Earth orbit is really for all of us. I have this image. We've all seen astronauts walk out the morning of launch. They have those orange suits on. They get in that really cool Astro van. They drive out to the launch pad. There will be a day where somebody does something very similar, but they're not employed by NASA. They're not even a part of the federal government. They're the modern day equivalent of airline pilots. And the thought of that is very compelling. Someday, I don't know, but there may be a space lines, United Space Lines or Southwest Space Lines. Ultimately, the goal is Mars. There's no question about it. Low Earth orbit in 10, 20 years, whatever the time frame may be. There will be sort of a base station, a base camp, that we hopefully will remain there, whether it's the ISS, the International Space Station, perhaps an independent, operated and built space station. I'd like to think that environment will sort of belong to the commercial world, whether it's perhaps a hotel in low Earth orbit that's serviced regularly, or whether it's industry. If industry has a business or fabricating, growing protein crystals or combustion science in low Earth orbit. So low Earth orbit will belong to a commercial entity. If you look at any one of the design reference missions, those ways that we could get to Mars with existing technology, it involves multiple launches of heavy lift vehicles that pre-position fuel on Mars, that pre-position the Mars return vehicle, that pre-position the Mars lander. Who's going to do that work? When we reach out to go to Mars, it's going to be a global effort. It's just too expensive even for one government to afford. It's going to be a global effort. The heavy lift hauling will be done by commercial entities. NASA will hand the business over and say, hey, deliver me 1,000 metric tons to low Earth orbit consisting of this, 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 and this. And the commercial providers will say, okay, sure, got it, no problem. So that is the extension of commercial support of the human spaceflight endeavor. The sky's the limit.